Good afternoon and welcome back to Maisel, Thailand. It is Tuesday, March 31st today, and I thought I would do something a little bit different today. While I'm walking around here, I thought I'd talk about some of my favorite TV shows, kind of as recommendations for anyone that is locked down in their homes, back in their home country, or stuck in hotels around the world like me. You know, we're all looking for things to do, and people who know me well know this about me, and maybe other people don't, but I love television, and there are so many good shows to watch these days, and I thought I'd suggest a few of my favorites, and maybe you can enjoy those and pass some time during this coronavirus era. I'm not joking when I say that I love TV shows, also movies and books, and I also love keeping lists of things. So I have a couple of databases going. I use Goodreads online, you know, where I have a list of every book I've ever read, and there's a website called Letterboxd, and there you can sign up for a free account, and you can keep a list of every movie you've ever watched, and leave reviews for them and things like that. I've never found a site like that for TV shows, so I've just been kind of keeping my own database, my own list of all the TV shows I've ever watched, and I'm currently up to 631. And that's not 631 episodes. That's not even 631 seasons. That's 631 complete shows. So all of Seinfeld, all of The Simpsons, all of The Wire, all of Dexter, every big show of the last few decades I think I've seen. And when you add up every show that I've watched since my childhood, the total comes to 631. I kind of like these lists, and I also keep a fairly detailed journal of things I do in my life. And I kind of like doing that for a little bit of a philosophical reason, because sometimes you might wonder, all right, I've been around for this many years. Where has all the time gone? What have I done? And then if you actually, look at the list of every book you've ever read, and then add up how much time it would take a person to read all those books, watch all those movies, watch all those TV shows, on top of all the other things you've done in your life, it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where some of my time went, And I like to refer back to the list just to enjoy them again and remind myself, oh yeah, that author, that book, that TV show, and who directed that, and oh, he directed a movie, and you can kind of make links between them to figure out new things to watch. So yeah, I'm a bit of a list keeper in that way. I thought I'd start with the new shows that are currently airing right now. So new episodes are coming out right now, and the ones that I've been keeping up on. A new show has come out called Devs, D-E-V-S. It was written and directed and produced all by Alex Garland, and that's what first caught my eye about the show, because I know Alex Garland from the book The Beach. He wrote that a long time ago. It's kind of a book about backpacker life here in Thailand. And for many years, you'd find that book everywhere you went. If you went out traveling in Asia, Southeast Asia, you'd find copies of that book in every hostel, every hotel. And so I'd read it quite a number of times. And then they made quite a well-received movie about that book. I remember listening to the soundtrack from that movie for a very long time. So the name Alex Garland is really in my head. And he has produced a lot of, he's either written, directed, or produced quite a few of even my favorite movies of the last few years. For example, he's been involved with 28 Days Later, Sunshine, Annihilation, Ex Machina, and probably a couple of more that I'm forgetting about. Oh, Dread. Dread was a real sleeper. I mean, such a great movie and a complete surprise. I never expected it to be as good as it was, considering what the original Dread was like. But Alex Garland's Dread is very, very good. So I had high hopes for the TV show Devs, and so far it is quite good. When I talk about these TV shows, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'll try very hard not to spoil anything, so don't worry about that. And I'll put a list of all the shows I talk about down in the description, so you can look them up later on. But yeah, Devs is kind of a science fiction story. Has a lot to do with concepts of determinism, free will, the multi-worlds theory, all this kind of thing. So it's a real thinker. Still has a lot of great characters in it, some very high stakes and suspense and some action. A bit of a slow burn, so some people may not like it because of that, but so far I'm enjoying it very much. I'm a little bit concerned because we're about midpoint through the first season, and in the first half of the season they promised a lot. I mean, they hit us with some really big ideas, that the stakes are very high, and I'm wondering if they're ever going to be able to follow through on that for real. I've been burned many times with TV shows that introduce, a lot of great ideas, really intriguing concepts, and then you get to the end of the show and they all amount to nothing at all. They don't explain anything. I'm looking at you, Damon Lindelof, who's done that with many shows. He will also, he'd stick in all kinds of really crazy, wild ideas into the first episodes of a show, and you're kind of hooked because you think, wow, what does that mean? I want to find out what that's all about. And then you get to the end of the show or the movie, and it turns out they meant nothing at all. There were no answers given. It was all just fancy stuff that he threw in because he thought it looked cool or sounded cool, but it really didn't mean anything. Alex Garland usually doesn't do that, so I'm hoping that Devs will stay, very high quality all the way to the end. I'm also watching the newest season of The Magicians. I think the latest season is season 5. And I think season 5 is the weakest of them all, the weakest of the seasons so far. But I'm still enjoying it. And if you haven't seen The Magicians, I recommend it. But of course, you'd have to start with season 1. Season 1 is very strong, very, very good television. So I recommend that highly as well. I've been watching the HBO documentary series McMillions, and that's been a lot of fun. Somehow I missed that story entirely. I don't know where I was in the world or in my life when this scandal, hit the news in the United States. It was all kind of a scam centered on a promotional program at McDonald's. I guess you could play Monopoly at McDonald's, and you get all these game pieces, and then you can play this game and win big prizes, up to $1 million. But apparently, all was not as it seemed, and now, like 20 years later, they made this documentary about all the people that were involved in this scam, in this scheme, and then the FBI investigation to bring them to justice. And it's a really fun series, very entertaining, great characters in it. So many characters you wouldn't think were real. It's like, come on, there's nobody really like that, is there? But yeah, these are all real people. A really fun story. Another show that I'm watching right now is Homeland. Yeah, it's incredible. This is the 8th season of Homeland. How in the world they could have 8 seasons of that show and it can still be as good as it is really surprises me. I'm really enjoying this season of Homeland. And it was, when it started, I noticed that it was really quite topical because it is all about the United States kind of brokering a peace deal with the Taliban. And they started the show, about this. And then the news broke at the same time that there really was a, peace negotiations going on between the United States and the Taliban in real life. So the show and real life were really mirroring each other. And that could have turned out into something really good for the show. But then the coronavirus hit, and I think the whole Taliban peace process has kind of been knocked right out of the media. Nobody's even talking about that anymore. So they don't have that going for it in terms of publicity for the show. But the show itself is very good. I've been watching Homeland since season 1. I've seen all previous 7 seasons, and I like it quite a bit. Claire Danes, she's just great in the show. Now for a couple of big shows that I really, really like. They're not airing right now. The seasons have already been broadcast, but I think they're really great shows. First one that popped into my head was The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It's an odd show in that I think people who watch it know how amazing it is, how good it is, and it's winning a lot of awards, I think. But I don't think it has hit like a wide mainstream audience. It's almost like the biggest TV show to be a little secret amongst a few people. I was a little bit hesitant to start it because, it feels at first, you might think it's a little bit dated because it's about a housewife in 1950s, 60s New York. All of the fashion and everything has got a real throwback quality to it. I mean, the set design and the clothing and production design is amazing. It's so good. So it's pretty much flawless. But at the same time, you might think, well, I don't want to watch such an old show. So we've reached a very busy road here in Mesot. But the show, despite being set at that time period and having a little bit of a throwback feel, is actually very modern and amazing. The main actress, Rachel Brosnahan, I believe, she plays this Mrs. Maisel. And again, I'm not giving anything away here because this is all in the trailer, but she's a housewife, very intelligent, very quick-witted, the character that she plays, just jammed with personality and energy. And through a variety of circumstances involving her husband, she ends up on stage at a comedy club in New York and performs and was a huge hit. So she starts to develop as a stand-up comedian. And of course, the whole idea of stand-up comedy is huge right now, so that gives it a very modern flavor. But her performances on stage, is really, really funny. So The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, can't recommend it enough. Might not be to everyone's taste, but I absolutely loved it. I think there are 4 seasons out right now, and I'm not sure when the 5th will come out. By the way, I'm walking along this highway here because there's a giant Tesco right up here, and I wanted to see whether the Tesco was still open or not. I believe it is open, but I'm curious to find out for sure in case I end up being here in Mesot longer than I think and more things start closing down. Then I may have to do a whole lot more shopping for food, and so I just want to find out whether Tesco is still operating and whether they're still stocking their shelves. I think everything will be fine there, but anyway, that's where I'm heading right now as we talk about TV shows. Another really big show that I hesitated watching for a long time was The Crown. You know, when you think about The Crown, you know the story of Queen Elizabeth II, you know, the British monarchy, Winston Churchill, the World Wars, all these sorts of things. You kind of heave a bit of a sigh, like, do I really want to get into all that? Wouldn't that be kind of boring? Who wants to hear long stories about the royal family and all this kind of stuff? So I hesitated for a long time. But as soon as I started watching it, man, I was hooked from the very, very first episode. I think the woman playing the young Queen Elizabeth was Claire Foy, and she was incredible. Really, really good in the role. Fascinating story. Again, the set design and the production. I mean, I watch these shows and I'm in awe that they can pull it off. You know, just how do you make a TV show that looks like it is set in the exact time in which it was set? You know, you feel like you've been thrown back in time. The amount of work that goes into that, yeah, it just blows my mind. But yeah, The Crown is very good. After 2 seasons, they switch actresses for Queen Elizabeth. I think the new actress is someone Coleman, Olivia Coleman, something like that. And when you watch the very first episodes where you switch from young Queen Elizabeth to slightly older Queen Elizabeth, at first you're like, oh man, this isn't good, because you're so used to the Claire Foy version of the character and you're really invested in her story. And it's pretty hard to make the jump to a new actor and a new person. But to be honest, after 1 episode, that was all gone. Fully accepted her as Queen Elizabeth as well. She's a great actress. I remember her from another TV show that I watched. I'm going to recommend it in my next series, so I'll bring that up when I do. So yeah, The Crown I think is very good. Getting a little bit more modern, a show that I think a lot of people have heard about, but maybe again it's not entirely on the mainstream radar, is The Expanse. I think season 4 just ended. So it's a very good science fiction series set in the near future, where humans have colonized Mars, the moon, and then the asteroid belt, you know, in our solar system. So it's not like you know, Star Trek or Star Wars, where they have warp speed and they can go anywhere in the galaxy, anywhere in the universe. The Expanse is much more realistic, based in our world, where the technology is very realistic, and they don't have faster than light travel. And I find all of that makes for a very good show, because they don't have magic technology to get them out of tough situations. They're constrained by the technology and the physics of our modern world. And because of that, the writing gets very tight and much more character-based and character-driven. It's a really amazing show. It is a bit of a complicated one, especially season 1. You really have to think, you know, you almost have to sit down with a notepad and write down names and details as they come up, because things move really fast and it's a complicated world. So you have to really think it through to figure out what's going on in the story. But yeah, The Expanse, very, very good. Well, here we are at Tesco Lotus Extra. This is actually the first Tesco I've ever been to in my life, so I don't know what they're like in other parts of the world. And as you can see, the parking lot is completely empty. That might make you think the place is closed, but we'll find out when I get closer to the front door. Right now, actually, I don't really have anything I need to buy. I'm not doing any elaborate cooking in my room or anything like that, so it's not like I buying fresh vegetables or anything, but I'm going to go inside anyway and take a look around, see what's going on inside Tesco. And then when I come out, I'll continue with my suggestions for TV shows to watch. Doug's favorites. Oh, looks like this door is closed. Oh, maybe the whole place is closed. Oh, here's a sign. Oh, interesting. Wuhan fever. If you have one or more of the following symptoms after traveling from Wuhan, China, notify nurse or staff immediately. And there's nothing in English here, so I don't know what this is saying. But I did see these other two customers heading towards the side. So maybe those notices are saying that you have to go in through a different entrance where they're controlling the flow of people. Let's go find out. Oh yeah, there's more activity over here. This is where all the cars are parked. And it looks like it's open over here. Well, that was pretty straightforward. Just going into the, going through the main entrance. I took my temperature with that forehead gun, and you get a squirt of hand sanitizer. I noticed that in the parking lot there was a, oh, how in the world do you go up? There's a pickup truck with an unmarked pickup truck with soldiers inside, kind of keeping an eye on the situation. Huh. There's some kind of a moving walkway to get upstairs to the grocery store, but it appears to be shut down. Let's take a look. Yes, there it is there. So, that's not how you go up. I did see people with shopping carts full of household groceries. So I think they are open upstairs. That's the main store here. So I'm gonna have to keep wandering around to find a way to go up to the second floor. Ah, I found one. So this is our escalator. It's nice to see that it is so calm and quiet here. Not many people, so I don't think we have anyone panic buying or hoarding or anything like that. Everything's very calm. Look. Thank you. Interesting. It kind of looks like there's a essential, non-essential goods division going on up here. I think there's a whole section over here. It's all toys, stationery, automotive, and appliances, and all of it is roped off, so you can't really shop there. And then there's another section in the middle here, clothing and shoes and handbags, and that is closed off as well. And the parts that are open is this middle section for food and water and essential items, I guess. So I guess they have permission to open the store, but only for the essential items sections. And this is the dairy section. Fresh vegetables, fruits, and then all the dry goods over there. I forgot to get a hand basket or anything, so even if I wanted to shop, I don't have any way to carry too many items. As I said, I don't really need anything right now with my simple life. But while I'm here, perhaps I can see if there's any pasta. I wouldn't mind a bit of a spaghetti and spaghetti sauce. That'd be a nice change. So I did find spaghetti. Got some Agnesi spaghetti here. Just gonna get one package and see how we go from there. No real need to stock up at the moment. And your basic Prego traditional spaghetti sauce. One thing is kind of funny here. I've gotten caught out by this a few times. I'm not a big drinker by any means, but I occasionally like a cold beer on a certain day. So if I pop into 7-Eleven, I'll grab a can, one can of cold beer, bring it to the counter, and then they tell me I can't buy it because there's only certain hours of the day that you can buy beer. And I thought it only applied to 7-Eleven, but I thought while I was here I could just pick up one can of beer and put it in the fridge, but they have a sign here as well. Right there. So you can only buy beer between 11 and 2, and then from 5 until midnight. And at the moment, what time is it? At the moment, I believe, yeah, it's 2:30. So I'm in between the times, so they can't sell me any beer. And that's happened to me a few times, Yeah, it always seems to be like 10 after 2 whenever I'm there, and I just think, cold beer would be nice. And then it turns out, no, yeah, not for you. No beer for you. Anyway, let's go pay for my spaghetti and get out of here. I couldn't help myself. I walked by a bubble milk tea stand and I got another one. It's the kind of thing I do. I mean, I will literally go 2 years without having a single bubble milk tea, and then I'll have a 2-week period where I'll have 5 of them, and then I might not have another one for another 2 years. That's just kind of the way I do things. I noticed a sign here. I've actually been surprised at how many places here are closed, like all of these little food stands and restaurants. I wasn't expecting to see that at all, but there is a sign here. And the sign says temporarily closed due to the provincial authorities' policy. Funny thing though is, despite the massive amount of Googling that I've done about Thailand, about Tak province, about new rules, new restrictions, new regulations, I never came across anything like that. Like, I never saw anywhere online, at least in English, new rules or restrictions for this province or that province. I saw nothing about Tak province at all, where I am. But I guess that's the thing. If you don't read Thai, that's where all of the local news is going to be. It's going to be in Thai. And if you don't go to those websites and you can't read Thai, a lot of this will just go right by you. You would have no idea. So apparently there are new rules for this province too. Again, more evidence of how dumb my brain is. It never occurred to me how difficult it would be to drink this through the mask, So you kind of have to sneak it under the mask to get a drink. This is very good. Again, I'm no connoisseur of food and drinks, but this one tastes quite a bit better than the one I've been having recently. So I think this is a nicer brand. I think there's something more flavorful about the tea, and the tapioca balls feel more fresh, less like hard rubber. So this is very, very good. This road behind me, by the way, it heads out to the border with Myanmar, and that's where the local immigration office is located. About, 8 or 9 kilometers behind me. If you walk that way, you'll eventually end up at the Friendship Bridge to Myanmar, and that's where immigration is. And that's another one of my concerns. I'm a little bit concerned about that these small provincial immigration offices will close. If I end up needing to extend my visa later this month, if I'm still here, my hope is to go back to that office. But I can't imagine that they have a lot of work to do out there, and they may end up just closing these remote immigration offices. I hope not, because if that's closed, I have no idea where I could go. I certainly don't want to go all the way to Bangkok. Anyway, that is a problem for the future. There's always enough things to think about. Right now, there's no point creating trouble that hasn't happened yet. Okay, continuing on with TV shows. If you're into sort of science fiction, superheroes, superpowers kind of thing, I really enjoyed The Boys. Again, I think amongst a certain group of people, The Boys is very well known and everybody knows how good it is. But I don't think it reached like a super wide audience. I won't say anything else about that show because it's full of surprises, and it's really interesting to discover that world, you know, on your own as you're watching the show. But it's essentially about a world where superpowers are fairly common. A lot of people have them. And in this world, it's not like Superman, you know, who's perfect and a hero all the time. It's not like that at all. It's much more grounded and more realistic about what would happen if certain individuals had these powers that made them, you know, far superior to normal humans. You know, exactly how would that play out politically and socially, and for all the individuals. It's a lot of fun too. Great characters, great stories, very, very funny. And yeah, it's one of those shows, when it ends, you're sad. It's like, oh no, that's the last episode of the first season, and you really want it to keep going. Similar to that one, and for me almost even more interesting, is the Umbrella Academy. The Umbrella Academy is also about a group of people with superpowers. A little bit different though, because they're not super powered on the level of Superman and you know, these really incredibly powerful individuals. Their powers are a little bit more restricted, a little bit more at the human level, but it's a very unusual show, very weird, very funky, very interesting. Also a little bit of a thinker. You have to pay attention to what's going on. But yeah, I enjoyed the Umbrella Academy immensely. And now some other shows, kind of rapid fire, just kind of small shows, I guess, that I really enjoyed that maybe a lot of people, not a wide audience, knows about. Had to put my little reading glasses on just so I can get them from my list here. Fleabag, I really enjoyed that show. It's got 2 seasons. Who's the actress? Phoebe Waller-Bridge, an amazing actress. It was based on a play that she did, and you can really see that. I enjoy almost any movies that are based on a play, has a real theatrical feeling to it. It's almost like she's telling the story of her life. She often turns to the camera and talks to you directly, you know, as if you're in the audience listening to her. I love any show that does that, but very funny, very quick-witted, very sharp humor. Yeah, Fleabag, really like that one. Barry, that is another one. If you have not seen Barry, I don't know what you're doing with your life. I think there's been, is it just the 1 season of Barry? I think so. It's, yeah, Bill Hader is the star. Henry Winkler is in it. And Sarah Goldberg. And again, I won't give anything away, just what's in the trailer. You know, Bill Hader plays a hitman, you know. He's a highly skilled assassin. And on one of his jobs, he happens to encounter sort of like an amateur theatrical group, and he gets the acting bug. And he, you know, wants suddenly to quit being a hitman and be an actor. And he takes classes, and he's studying, doing improv, you know, doing Shakespeare, all these kinds of things. Very, very funny show. A lot of action in it as well. Bill Hader is exceptional in it. And then for me, the whole show builds up to one scene in particular. And I've gone back to this scene over and over and over again and watched it over and over again. I think you can even see it on YouTube. It's called the, Bill Hader, Barry, my lord, the queen is dead scene. If you just watch it on its own, it won't mean much to you. But when you see it in the context of the show, I mean, it's so emotional. Really, really resonates. Barry. Highly recommend Barry. Russian Doll is another one, starring Natasha Lyonne. And Russian Doll is essentially a Groundhog Day story. And for me, that's all you'd have to say to me to get my interest. Anything based on a Groundhog Day theme, you've got me. I'm hooked. So the main character, played by Natasha Lyonne, lives the same day over and over and over again. And her performance in the show is extraordinary. It's so much fun. The world that she lives in New York is so interesting to see. Her circle of friends, everybody that she knows. It is just a very funny but also a very meaningful show. All of these Groundhog Day shows tend to be, because there's usually a lesson to be learned, right? The only way you can break the cycle, the curse of having to live the same day over and over again, is to learn why you're trapped in that cycle, and you grow as a person, and then you're trying to break out of that cycle. That's what Bill Murray was doing in Groundhog Day, and Natasha Lyonne has to do it here. Very good show. I really enjoyed it. Downward Dog is another one I really recommend. The actress Alison Tolman. I don't think it had a very wide audience either, and it was canceled after one season. But for me, I would have loved there to be more seasons. And it's really the story told from the point of view of a dog. The dog's name is Martin. And Martin can speak, and he talks to the camera all the time, and he narrates his life with his owner. And very, very funny show. Very different, It's not quite like anything else I'd seen. Very charming, very heartfelt. Just to see the relationship with humans from the dog's point of view, exactly what they're thinking and what they see. Very funny. Another show that's perhaps not so well known, but I really enjoyed a lot. It's called Episodes. And Episodes is a story of two British writers of a TV show in the UK. And that show was very, very popular in the UK. So, as tends to happen, an American TV production team got hold of them and said, hey, why don't you come to Hollywood? You come to Los Angeles and you make the American version of that show. And with that premise alone, you can you can just imagine how it goes. They have certain British ideas of the tone of the show, the understated humor, the dry humor, the quiet sort of intelligence of the characters. But of course, the Americans wanted something entirely different, much bigger and broader and more exciting, I suppose. And instead of the star that they wanted, the star actor, the Americans wanted, of all people, Matt LeBlanc, who played Joey on Friends, to play the star of this show. And of course, the British writers couldn't think of anybody worse for this character than Matt LeBlanc. But as it turns out, he's quite good at it. And in the show Episodes, Matt LeBlanc was a real surprise to me. He came across very well, a very capable actor, very good in that role, and very entertaining. So yeah, I enjoyed Episodes quite a bit. And a British show that might be similar in some ways, which I enjoyed a great deal, is called the Detectorists. I think there are 3 seasons of the Detectorists. I might have seen only 1 season. I'm not sure I've been able to track down season 2 or 3 yet. But the first season of Detectorists was just amazing. It's the story of a very small village in the British countryside where they have a club of people that search for ancient artifacts using metal detectors. And that's the basis of the whole show. But these people, of course, are in the best British tradition, very quirky, very interesting individuals. And the whole show is just, it's one of these shows you'd call delightful and charming. You know, I loved every minute of it. So that is the Detectorists. It's fun, but it's also kind of a window into a world that I didn't know much about. You know, the metal detecting societies, what they find, and what is still out there in the ground of, you know, of the United Kingdom, things that they're looking for. Yeah, really entertaining, a great show. I mentioned the actress who plays the older Queen Elizabeth in The Crown, Olivia Colman. She also stars in a British show called Broadchurch. And yeah, I recommend Broadchurch highly. It's set in a small seaside town in the UK. And she plays a police officer, a detective in that town. And there is a horrific murder in the town, and she has to solve the murder along with another detective who if I remember right, he's more of a big city detective who was kind of disgraced in his career in the big city, and he kind of moved to the small town to get away from his past. But he brought sort of big city police detective ideas to this small town, and he and Olivia Colman's character had to work together to solve this murder in the town. And it's a great show. You know, it's kind of in the tradition of all those shows where there is the murder mystery and the investigation, and that's the main thing driving the plot. But what's really happening is that as they try and find the murderer, solve the mystery, they're uncovering layer after layer of things going on in their town that nobody knew about. The deep, dark secrets of all the people living in this town. And the eventual answer to the riddle is really quite something. So that is Broadchurch. I recommend it highly. Also similar to that one is another British show, again based on a police story called Happy Valley. I won't say much more than that, just give you the name. You can look it up for yourself and see if it's something you would enjoy. Happy Valley. A more recent show is something called Looking for Alaska. I watched it, I think, a few months ago. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I knew nothing about it when I went into it, but I guess it is based on a very well-known series of YA books, and it's the story of a set of young students, you know, kind of teenagers essentially, who are attending a kind of an elite boarding school, but it's a bit of an unusual boarding school. They seem to present it as elite, but it doesn't look that rich to me. It just looks kind of different. It's out in the countryside, you know, on a lake, a very natural setting, and yeah, it's a boarding school in the United States. And it's a sort of a, you know, coming of age story. And from people who read the books and know the books well, I think there was some concern that the actress that they chose to play Alaska, who is the main character, didn't really fit the image they had from reading the books. But I'd never read the books, so I accepted her fully as the character Alaska. Well, I'm back in my hotel room now. Had a bit of a technical glitch. My GoPro froze, and no matter what I did, I could not get it to restart. I think it was just overheated. It's very, very hot out today. When you record for a long time, it gets almost red hot to the touch. and it shut down. And then when I brought it back to my room here and let it cool down for a long time, I finally got it to restart. But all the video files on the memory card got corrupted, and I had to rebuild all the files. And yeah, finally I managed to rebuild the files, so they're all back, and now I'm using a fresh memory card. But that's a life with a GoPro. You know, it's a very nice camera for being lightweight and small, but it's very touchy in terms of the software. So you always run the risk of it freezing up or corrupting one of the files or something like that. But we're back on. When it froze, I was busy talking about the show Looking for Alaska, and I was just saying that I found the actress that played the character Alaska, I found her to be great. I thought all the characters are great. I enjoyed that show quite a bit. Moving on to a couple of more recent shows. Not long ago, I watched a whole series called I Am Not Okay With This, and it's kind of another of these supernatural or superpower shows, you know, a young teenager who feels like she doesn't fit in and what's her place in the world and all this kind of stuff, and then bam, suddenly she discovers that she has powers. That's a very popular theme, you know, for shows in the modern era, and this is another one. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It feels almost like a show out of time, because I think it is set in modern time, like it's set to now, but a lot of the characters in the show are kind of living in a retro world where their furniture and their cars and everything about them kind of dates back to the 80s or the 90s or something. So you often get this feeling of like, what is this? Is this set in the 80s? Like at the time of Stranger Things or something? Or is this set in, you know, the year 2019? It's hard to tell. But I found it to be a very enjoyable show, and the main actress was also in the movie It. And another of the main actors played Stanley, and his character in this show is also called Stanley. But he has a lot more to do in this than he did in the movie It. So he does a really good job. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Goes by very fast. A very enjoyable show, I thought. I Am Not Okay With This. Another show with a very unusual name that I watched not that long ago. Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet. And I would say if you enjoyed Silicon Valley, you would enjoy this one as well. It's the story, not really of a startup. Well, yeah, it is actually. There is some plots in there of the actual startup of these tech companies and computer gaming companies. But the main plot line is centered on this gaming company today with a very eccentric but brilliant boss and CEO, and then all the staff underneath him. I mean, everybody is kind of wacky, everybody is kind of interesting, and it's an interesting glimpse into the world of a modern gaming company. So yeah, I enjoyed that one quite a bit. As I said, Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet, if you can find that one. So that's kind of my list of, I got off the top of my head for some recent shows that I kind of enjoyed. Maybe shows that are a little bit not as well known as others. And just to round out the list, if you're looking for other shows to watch, I put together a list of other things that I enjoy. Some of them are very well known and are classics. Others maybe not so much. Kind of a rapid fire. Of course, we recently had another season of Rick and Morty, which was amazing. If you've never seen Rick and Morty, well, go back to season 1. You're in for a treat. Start from the beginning. In that same vein, Archer. I love Archer. It's such a great show, so entertaining, so many great characters. A little bit meta at times, I suppose, which I really enjoy. Keeping in the meta theme, going back a few more years, Arrested Development. If you've never seen that, that is a lot of fun. Start with season 1. Community is another one. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. Very meta. The story of, oddly enough, a study group at a community college, Seems like a pretty unusual subject for like a sitcom, but it works really, really well with the characters they brought together. And as I said, it's a very meta show. One character, Abed, is obsessed with television himself, and he sees life and he sees the whole world in terms of television. So they do a lot of kind of like breaking of the fourth wall, where they're filming this show, but then Abed puts it in the context of them being in a TV show. He sees everything in terms of the stereotypical plots of TV shows and movies. So it was really, really intelligent show. Very, very smart. Very, very entertaining. Borgen, I enjoyed quite a bit. I believe it's a Danish show, a political show. Covers the career of the Prime Minister of Denmark, I believe, and all the wheelings and dealings between the political parties there. And if you know nothing about the political systems of Europe, for me it was a very eye-opening show, Borgen. Very well done, very, very interesting. Extras I really enjoyed. Ricky Gervais' project, kind of a quirky show about TV production and of course the lives of all the extras in these TV shows. Is very, very good show. Oddly enough, whenever I think about shows that I really enjoyed, I keep coming back to Constantine, which would not be, I don't think it makes the list for a lot of people of one of the great shows, but for some reason it really resonated with me. It's Keanu Reeves playing a kind of a sorcerer who has spells and abilities for fighting demons and any of these creatures coming from hell. Really kind of a cool show, Constantine. For some reason I really enjoyed it quite a bit. Some real classics, of course. Firefly, if you've never seen that, check it out. Freaks and Geeks, going way, way back. If that's not on your radar, check that one out. Heroes is something I've always enjoyed. Again, getting back to the theme of young people discovering that they have superhuman powers. The first season of Heroes is very good. It's one of those shows, though, that didn't quite stick the landing. I was expecting a lot more from the conclusion of the story and where it was headed. And to me, the ending of it just kind of fell flat. But it was still worth the journey to get there. And then the second and third seasons, not as good as the first, but if you're into that kind of storytelling, it's fun. It's a fun show. Great characters. I really enjoyed that. If you're talking about all the Marvel shows, like Marvel's Daredevil, Marvel's The Punisher, all those shows, my favorite of the bunch is Marvel's Jessica Jones. I think that's a very, very fun show. Check that one out. From Britain, again, talking about kids with superpowers, Misfits. That is such a great show. So much fun. Has such a different tone to American shows. And interestingly enough, if you watch The Umbrella Academy, one of the main characters in The Umbrella Academy, and probably the most fun character, Klaus, he's played by the same actor who plays a character in Misfits. And he almost plays the same character in both shows. Very flamboyant and theatrical and over the top. And he's just so much fun to watch. So if you like The Umbrella Academy, you will love Misfits. Man, I've got so many TV shows on this list, but just to cut it a bit short, and to keep with the theme of shows people may not have heard about, I really liked Travelers. As you might have guessed, I'm a real sucker for sci-fi, anything like that. Like I used to love The Twilight Zone, and then, of course, the modern Black Mirror, I think, is an amazing show. But I lose interest in a show if it loses track of its own world. Like they create a world with its own rules,
you could have superpowers in that world, but then they start losing track of the limits to that world and things start not making any sense at all. And that happens a lot, especially if you fold, time travel into the mix, because time travel makes no sense at all. I mean, as soon as you start thinking about a time travel plot, it falls apart because nothing makes sense. If you have this situation, why don't you just go back in time and fix it? There's always a go back in time and fix it option. So it starts to make no sense after a while. But Travelers is a very interesting show based on time travel, with people from the future coming back in time to alter the course of history to avert a future catastrophe. Very similar to the plot you find in the Terminator movies, all these kinds of movies and shows. But Travelers has a very intelligent and very tight approach to the whole idea. And I just found it absolutely fascinating to see how they work through the ideas of time travel, and when they alter time and it doesn't quite work out, how they can use the time travel technology that they have in order to fix what they've screwed up, and to go at it over and over again. How many do-overs do you get? Kind of like 12 Monkeys is another great example of that kind of storytelling. But yeah, I really enjoyed Travelers. That was one of my favorites of that genre. Let's see what else. Kind of modern times too. The third season of Ozark just came out. I haven't watched it yet. I've downloaded a few episodes that I'll be able to watch. But I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the first and second seasons of Ozark. So I'm really looking forward to the third season. And I will end it with a very unusual choice. I don't know if anyone has heard of the Santa Clarita diet. That show was kind of on my radar for a long time, but then when I saw the trailers for it and this and that, I was like, there's no way that show can work. It's just, there's something about it that put me off. And it is basically a zombie film in a way. It's a TV show about the undead, where our main character becomes a zombie. She becomes one of the undead, but she still has control of her mental faculties. So she's basically who she was before. She's a normal person, but now she has to eat people. And she and her husband and her daughter find themselves having to kill people that she can eat in order to stay alive. And they don't really want to do that, but they keep ending up meeting these really, really horrible people that you might think, well, if you have to kill somebody, you might as well kill this person because they are a murderer themselves, or they're really, really awful people, or they kill people by accident. They didn't really intend to, but it just happened. But the show is so weird, it's so bizarre, that it shouldn't work at all. It really should not work when you think about it. But they managed to toe the line just right to keep it funny and horrifying. It's just such a bizarre show that it just manages to work, and I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. Be warned, though, that if you have a queasy stomach, you will not be able to watch this show because it is gory beyond belief. I mean, it is gory to the point of a cartoon in terms of how she goes about satisfying her hunger for human flesh. It's it's beyond anything I've ever seen. Yeah, it's really quite something to see. So that's Santa Clarita Diet. Not for everyone, but if you like to see what's going on out there in the TV land these days, check it out. You might find it more entertaining than you'd expect. So I'm going to end it there. It's a lot of TV shows to mention, but I don't know. People need some suggestions maybe for things to watch. Maybe one or two of those will help you pass the time wherever you are in the world. Interestingly enough, when I was walking back from Tesco, from the grocery store, I had bought a little bit of spaghetti there and wanted to see how much of that shopping complex was still open. On my way back, I was seeing a lot more changes. I saw 3 or 4 emergency vehicles driving around the city with big signs on them saying, COVID-19 emergency task force or something like that. And one of them stopped right beside me, and they opened the back doors, and they had a patient in the back on a stretcher, and she was hooked up to, IV drips and all kinds of things. So they had picked someone up or was taking someone back home from the hospital. I'm not sure. But there's suddenly a lot more activity going around in Mesa than there was before, because I'd never seen any of these vehicles before. And as I said, the wave of closures seems to be growing and growing and growing as the days go by, even here in quiet Mesa. And the pattern seems to be towards more businesses closing, more things shutting down. So I think we are far away from the peak of the COVID-19 era, basically. So we're still on an upward slope, and we'll see how long it'll take before we get to the top and start hopefully heading down the other side and recovering. All right, that is it. We'll see if I can put these videos together, even despite the fact that they have been corrupted by my evil GoPro once more. So that's it for today, and I will see you in the next video.